Welcome to Afrik-innovscience, the platform where we explore and celebrate the incredible minds driving innovation in science, technology, and engineering across Africa. I'm your host, Patrick Amunye, and today we have a special guest who is making waves in the world of microbiology and AMR drug discovery research. But before we dive into our conversation, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss an inspiring story of innovation. Thank you very much. Good day, Natasha Murape. Thank you very much to be with us today. Please, can you introduce yourself like that for the people who don't know you? Who are you?
Hi, Patrick. Thank you for inviting me to share my journey with your viewers. Like you've already mentioned, my name is Natasha. I am Zimbabwean. For the past 4 years, I've been living in South Africa, undertaking studies at university. I hold a Bachelor of Science with majors in biochemistry and microbiology. This year, I'm currently completing my honors degree in microbiology at the Antimicrobial Drug Discovery Hub.
Wonderful, wonderful. And what inspired you to pursue a career in microbiology and drug discovery, especially in the context of addressing antimicrobial resistance?
Okay. I think that inspiration dates back to high school. Biology was one of my favorite subjects, and I also remember just being fascinated by observing life under a microscope. And, I think that led me to become interested in wanting to understand microorganisms, the diseases they cause, and their impact on human and animal health. So I just decided to follow through with my passion for microscopic life, and I chose to study microbiology. And with regards to drug discovery, I actually got introduced to drug discovery through a module we were doing in biochemistry last year, during my last year of my undergraduate studies. But it sort of focused on chronic diseases like cancer. Then earlier on this year, I learned about antimicrobial resistance drug discovery when I was starting for a supervisor, actually. And I really fell in love with natural products drug discovery. It just made like a lot of sense to me, this idea of going back into the natural environment to find compounds that we can translate into drugs to solve our problems of antibiotic resistance. And so that's how I met my current research group. And what also struck me about this group is that they were working with natural products that were sourced from the marine environment. So they sourced their natural products from sea sponges and these rock-like structures, living rocks actually, called stromatolites. And once they obtain these compounds, they sort of screen for activity against a group of pathogens, a group of bacteria, which are called the escape bacteria. And the escape bacteria are like the main cause of antibiotic resistance globally. So I just thought that work was very interesting, and that's what led me into this field.
Could you share some general aspects of your current research project in antimicrobial resistant drug discovery? Absolutely. Without revealing any confidential details, of course?
Sure. So my research project is essentially a target-based screening. And what that means is that we identify a target, which is a component of the bacterial cell. And that could be a receptor, that could be an ion channel, that could be a protein on the membrane or lipids, something like that. So the target I'm working on is an enzyme, it's a protein. And this target must play an essential role in sustaining the life of that bacterial organism, right? And ideally, it shouldn't be present in our cells because we are the host organism and we don't want to develop a drug that is toxic to us, but we want it to be as lethal as possible to the target organism, which is the bacteria. So that's basically just some background to my project. So the actual work involves, making use of a lot of these molecular biology techniques, such as cloning, gene expression, and protein purification. So only after I've purified my protein can I proceed to perform enzyme assays. And there are two types of assays that we perform. The first one is an activity assay, and that helps us sort of determine if the enzyme we've expressed is active, because that's our target, right? And the second assay is the screening assay. And in the screening assay, we basically screen these libraries, which are basically collections of these natural product compounds. And these are basically in the form of pure compounds or crude extracts or fractions. And we screen them to try and identify any inhibitors that could work against this target. And I mean, the goal is that if we inhibit this enzyme was also part of a biosynthetic pathway. So it's part of a pathway. So we believe that if we target this enzyme, if we find an inhibitor, if we block it, we disrupt the entire pathway, which is essential for sustaining life, and the bacteria dies. So it's a target-based approach. And after we identify that inhibitor, my project ends there, but you could also perform other experiments downstream, such as cytotoxicity assays, dosage experiments. You can try and elucidate the structure of your compound, your hit compound. You can try and optimize it to make it more effective at inhibiting and also less lethal to our human cells. So yeah.
Wow, inspiring. In your experience, what are the major challenges and opportunities you foresee in the field of AMR drug discovery, particularly in the African context?
Yeah, there are a lot of challenges, but I think the main challenges I would like to highlight are the lack of infrastructure. I think that's the main one. And by that, I mean buildings, the buildings, because that's where our research centers are located. And I think the onus is on universities and our African governments to invest in that infrastructure. But then also infrastructure includes instrumentation, the instruments we use to actually conduct all of that research. I think a lot of labs are just under-resourced in that area because they are very expensive. And for this type of advanced research, you need a lot of it. I think the second challenge would be funding. I think there's great difficulty in securing long-term funding. These research projects are very expensive. Running them is very expensive. And funding is needed, to cover costs, for salaries, purchasing equipment, maintaining that equipment, and the reagents we use to conduct these experiments are also very expensive. Another problem with funding is that sometimes it's very specific for a type of infectious disease. For example, there's a lot of funding out there for HIV, malaria, for TB. But I feel like antimicrobial drug discovery is quite a new field in Africa, and there's not like too much funding available for it. So yeah, funding is definitely an issue. I think the third challenge would be poor collaboration amongst researchers. It's very important for researchers or for these research groups to collaborate, to just share their expertise, to also share their natural product libraries. Like I said, these are collections of these compounds, right? So the drug discovery process is actually, there are many phases involved in it. And other research groups concentrate on producing these libraries. But because in Africa, we are a little resource limited, we can sort of divide that labor. If other labs are set up to screen these compounds, then we can share that. We can share these libraries. We can ship off these libraries to other labs who can then screen them, because we can't do everything. If we could, do everything, then
yeah, we cannot do everything at the same time. Yeah, it's true.
Yes. Yeah, we would need a
Collaboration
lot
is
of
really important, especially in Africa, because
absolutely.
as you mentioned, funding is a very big issue, infrastructure also. And
Yes,
if we don't have funding, infrastructure, the least thing we can do is to collaborate. It's easier
yes,
for us to collaborate than have funding or infrastructure. So please, guys, you guys watching this video right now, if you are researchers as like Natasha,
yeah,
Murape, please don't hesitate to contact her. Maybe you
absolutely.
guys can find something, a new enzyme, I don't know, very quickly.
New targets.
Collaboration is really important. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's paramount. But like you've also mentioned, there are opportunities for AMR drug discovery in Africa. I think it's very important for us to mention that Africa is very rich in biodiversity. It's a very large continent, so there's a lot for us to explore in our terrestrial and marine environments. But I also feel like that biodiversity is underexploited or underutilized. And yet it's teeming with natural products that could be translated into essential medications, right? So the potential for us to explore something out there is enormous. And I also think that this generation of Africans has, produced a number of graduates, especially
Mhm.
in various fields of STEM. And I think we have the human capacity to carry out, this kind of research. So there are opportunities as well.
Exactly. Wonderful. And how do you envision the impact of your work in AMR, drug discovery, on the healthcare landscape in Africa and globally? So the impact on society of what
Yeah.
you're doing.
Yeah. I think once we move beyond, the research into drug production, we can anticipate like massive changes in the public health landscape in Africa. And to just give context to that, Africa, carries about 20 to 25% of the global burden of infectious diseases. And yet we rely on big pharma in the global north to produce drugs for our public health needs. And the challenge with that is that pharmaceutical companies in the global north are sort of moving away from antibiotic production. And we have seen them shift towards, the production of chronic medication because it's more profitable, to make drugs for diabetes, cancer, which are diseases that are more common in the global north than the global south. So it's very important for us to produce our own medicines that address our public health needs. And we can expect, impacts such as improved access to essential medications. Once we start producing our own, I think we will be able to reduce that, inequality in access to essential medications globally. And I think that in turn will also improve, health and clinical outcomes and reduce mortality rates, especially in neonates, young infants and patients who are high risk from, dying from these hospital-acquired infections. I think it will also reduce the burden on our healthcare systems. And, I'd also just like for us to remember that our main goal in AMR drug discovery is to eliminate these resistant pathogens. But we can't do that completely because, resistance evolves through a natural process. But we can actually slow down the trends of antimicrobial resistance, like the spread and the mortality. So yeah, I think ultimately that will improve the quality of life in Africa.
Mhm. Yeah. Natasha, you are involved in various organizations like Hold Prize,
Yeah.
and you're also a training coordinator. How do you contribute to promoting science education and awareness in your community?
Okay. The whole prize society is actually fairly new to Rhodes University. And after a hiatus, we decided to bring it back to life. The goal for us this year was to set up a structure and a system for the continuity of the society. But also, the aim of the Hold Price Society is to train people to pitch their ideas. So, ideas that aim to solve, societal problems. So our members come from a range of disciplines, and they're encouraged to think out of the box. So they're not all scientists, and we're not really training them, science education or anything like that. So just to give background on the society, we basically are part of an international society that holds a program every year. It's like a competition is held every year for a cash prize of $1 million. And every year there's a theme around which teams of members must come up with an idea that basically generates social change. So most of our training is business related. But speaking of promoting science education, especially around antimicrobial resistance, that's something that we have been working on implementing as a research group that, performs research on AMR. So as part of the Antimicrobial Drug Discovery Hub, the research group, we hope to promote the science education through collaborating with peer educators on campus, which are an extension of our healthcare center. And we want to amplify the message of AMR and antimicrobial stewardship. But we also want to simplify that scientific jargon so that everybody can understand that. So we are proposing, to partner with these peer educators, which are students. Another strategy of ours is also to use posters and infographics, to just visually communicate these sciences and, the facts around antimicrobial resistance. And lastly, this coming month in November, we hope to also observe the World Antimicrobial Resistance Awareness Week, and we hope to just bring awareness by making use of our university communication channels, such as our university newspaper and our university radio station to just amplify that message and to just get that information out there so that people are informed about the current trends in AMR and what they can do, to just sort of minimize that spread, from just,
Wonderful, wonderful. What you're doing is awesome with all your collaborators there in Zimbabwe and South Africa. It's awesome, really. And you are really promoting science, technology, engineering, and mathematics with your actions. And it's really important. It's a listing we can do, as I said earlier, because funding is really difficult in Africa. Infrastructures also. Many countries don't have infrastructures necessary for research, and it is really important to prepare the next generation who will do better than us. We need to prepare them psychologically with such actions you are doing right now. You are going to inspire not just one person or one child, but many, many, many children. And my wish is that many girls participate to such programs because the girls are awesome when they have the tools needed to pursue their dream. Wonderful, wonderful, Natasha. Could you tell us about the skills and qualities you believe are essential for success in the field of microbiology and drug discovery? Any advice for aspiring scientists as well?
Okay. The field of drug discovery it sort of integrates many disciplines. It's actually a multidisciplinary field. So most natural product drug discovery groups will have two sections within their group, within their research group. They'll have a biology section and a chemistry section. Under the biology section, you will find your typical biological scientists, such as your biochemists, your microbiologists, and your cell biologists. And, you know, they are just basic core skills that they all have. And these are basically just molecular biology techniques, like the ones I've already mentioned, you know, the cloning, gene expression, protein purification, the assays, and culturing techniques, you know, to grow these microorganisms. So, you know, if a person can develop skills in that area, that would be great. And then in the chemistry section, we have synthetic chemists, and we also have pharmaceutical chemists who usually occupy that section. And basically, they work on these compounds. They fractionate these compounds and obtain pure compounds. They produce these libraries. So, you know, they are definitely well versed in chemistry techniques, chemistry analytical techniques such as mass spectrometry, NMR, HPLC, and all of that. But of late, another growing subfield in drug discovery is bioinformatics. You know, we are sort of moving towards integrating AI to help us also find these novel compounds which could be translated into drugs. And we are using a lot of that computer-aided drug discovery, drug design. And there's also a lot of genetic analyses going on. So, because we really need to understand these genes. Like, I think genetic analysis is basically the foundational level for most of our cellular biology these days. We need to understand gene expression. We need to understand how these microorganisms work. Because also some of these microorganisms cannot be cultured in the lab. So we need to identify which microorganisms are present in our samples, and we can do that through genetic analyses. So I would advise anyone who feels hesitant to pursue these fields in STEM to consider them with an open mind, especially if you're passionate about scientific research. The skills you will attain are transferable and can be used by most research groups, because, you know, I think the hesitancy comes from this feeling or thinking that if I if I take up a degree in the cell biology field, then I'm only stuck with, you know, malaria research, whatever. You know, a lot of these skills are transferable. You can hop from malaria research into HIV research, into AMR drug discovery, because the foundation is just literally the same. So I'd advise anyone to just still go for it if you're passionate about science research, that is.
Lastly, Natasha, before we conclude this interview, is there any final message or advice you would like to share with our viewers regarding your journey, aspirations, or the importance of advancing science and technology in Africa?
Okay. Well, on a closing note, I would like to advise people, you know, to sort of think differently about the problems we have in Africa. The challenges we face on our continent are not a dead end, you know, but rather an opportunity for us to find innovative solutions to our problems. That means we need to learn to think critically and innovatively so we can work with what we have. But to do that, we also need to empower ourselves with education, right? And that also includes STEM education. And I also just wanted, you know, to just give, you know, an example of my supervisor, the example of my supervisor. She's a phenomenal woman because she's able to just multitask. I really appreciate the way she sort of approaches problem solving. She approaches problem solving with systems thinking, you know, and that's reflected in the way she's able to coordinate her research group. In our research group, there are many scientists from different backgrounds, but for her to be able to just bring us together and produce a singular project and produce a project in which we can, you know, she can integrate all of our skills to solving one problem. I think that just shows that we need to expand our thinking in that direction as a whole. All of us need to start thinking like that to just solve the problems we have on the continent. Yeah.
A powerful message to conclude our interview. Thank you very much,
Yeah,
Natasha.
absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And to our viewers, stay curious, stay innovative, and stay tuned to Afrik-innovscience. Until next time, take care and keep pushing the boundaries of knowledge. Goodbye.
Bye.